Hey everyone, I'm Bridget and I'm one of the youth leaders here at YCC. Now, today is Good Friday and we as a church are talking about the theme of loss. So, today is when we remember the death of Jesus on the cross. He was killed by the Romans because he said that he was the Messiah, the Son of God, and they didn't like that. And when we look back at that, at the death of Jesus, we look back with the knowledge and the joy that yes, he suffered a slow and horrible and painful death, but we know that that wasn't the end. We know that he rose again 3 days later. And we are actually in a very blessed position that we are able to step back and see the whole story, that we are able to call this Good Friday, and that we are able to see the cross not just as an ancient torturous execution device, but as a symbol of hope, forgiveness, and redemption. But what about the people who were there with Jesus at the time? They didn't know that he was going to resurrect. So to them, instead of the cross being a symbol of all the good things that we see it as now, to them it was a symbol of loss and of sorrow. The loss of the person that they thought was going to save them, but now that seemed impossible. The loss of their hope and their comfort and the one that they would turn to when they needed guidance. To a lot of people, Jesus' death would have meant that their whole world would have crumbled. Think about the disciples. They gave up their whole lives to follow him, and now what? And I think in a lot of ways, many of us will be able to relate to this when it comes to this past year of lockdown, where the things that we centered our lives around got taken away from us, whether that be our routine of school and work, or connecting with friends and family, or just being able to travel and go to places. In one way or another, we have all experienced and are still experiencing loss, and many of us are still processing that as it's happening. And that's exactly what grief is. Grief is the mental or emotional suffering that comes as a response to loss. So we are all suffering through very real grief, this mourning that has come as a result of our whole reality being rocked and our lives being changed against our will. Our entire country, or world even, is in a state of mourning, grieving the loss of what we had before. And yes, some people find this harder than others, admittedly, but for every single one of us, there will be something that we are missing, something that we are mourning, something that has left a bit of a hole inside of us. So let's take this back to Jesus, because that's kind of the point of all this. We know that he rose on the third day. That dark time between the death and the resurrection, where people felt hopeless and lost and confused, that was never going to be the end of the story. We see all throughout the Bible where people find themselves in the worst places that seem like the end and that there's no way out. But God is a God of redemption and of restoration and of hope and of joy, and he will never leave us in that place of hopelessness and suffering. And yes, sometimes it seems impossible, but God is the God of the impossible. So there is nothing that he can't do to save you from wherever you're finding yourself right now. Daniel was lifted from the lion's den. David was rescued from the hands of Goliath. The Israelites were freed from Egyptian captivity. The ocean was split into two for Moses. The sun was stopped in the sky for Joshua. And Jesus rose from the dead for you. Many of us will have heard of the famous verse from Jeremiah 29, which says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." So remember, when Jesus is involved, there is never loss without hope. Have a great day.